One of the big contributors to the problem of the leadership gap and of leadership development challenges is the focus on weaknesses that is so deeply embedded in our organizations that we're not even often conscious of them. It's a bit like trying to explain water to a fish. It's part of our psyche, part of our thinking. It's just part of our approach to how do we develop leaders. So Peter Drucker wrote a great little book that was actually one of the first books on management I ever read way back many years ago in the 70s when I went into my first leadership role. A little book of his called The Effective Executive, came out in 1967, and it's the first more modern, well, probably one of the first references we know of to the idea of building strengths. It was an entire chapter of the book. It's taken us 40 years to catch up with his thinking, with actually having now evidence and research to back up what he said. But here's what he said back then. He said, you can't build performance on weaknesses. You can only build on strengths. To focus on weakness is foolish and irresponsible, a misuse of human resources, because all weakness really is a limitation. Now, there's some caveats to that, which we're going to look at as we get a little further into this. But clearly, he was on a track that was very different than most thinking. The underlying idea was well-rounded leaders, that we need to look at these competencies and build leaders that are well-rounded across all of these competencies. Well, that's turning out to not be true. That's turning out to not be what the research and the evidence is showing. And when you start to really think about the best leaders you know, and we'll go through this exercise later, or outstanding leaders of our history, Gandhi, Churchill, Kennedy, you start to name the top leaders, Steve Jobs at Apple, were they well-rounded? No, not at all. They had huge flat spots. They had major weaknesses in many cases. But they also had tremendous towering strengths. And so it starts to really completely challenge our conventional thinking about what does it take to strengthen and build leadership. So we're arguing here for the end of the week that we want to move away from that more common weakness-based approach.